Genuinely what's happening here. I'm not insulting anybody. I'm trying to be as genuine as possible the way that I see it. This is human beings making their absolute best effort to try to understand something that can never, ever be fully understood, okay? I applaud the effort. I'm sure there are good people. But that doesn't mean we actually know anything meaningful from these studies that they're doing. This is not a knock on the people. It doesn't mean that we know anything at all. It's just very difficult for our puny little human brains and our big giant human egos to actually admit that us doing our very best looks a lot like flailing around helplessly for decades and getting exactly nowhere. At the end of the day, Mother Nature trumps us no matter how advanced we think that we get. Now, as the incredibly well-respected, someone who I respect very much, Dr. Peter Attia once said, we all know that nutrition science is bottom of the barrel science. It's just the best we've got. And he's thought of as one of the top minds in the industry. He's literally thought of as one of the top minds in the industry. So if we know that nutrition science is bottom of the barrel science, there's a ton of problems with it, like I just pointed out to you. So let's dig in. Let's dig into the science of medicine. And I want to briefly just touch on published science, published studies as a whole, but particularly I'm going to look at the field of medicine, which is actually far simpler than nutrition science. That's the thing, far simpler, and it's still a mess, okay? So we're going to jump into some of the results that I've highlighted in previous. So let's dig in. Let's dig into the science of medicine. And I want to briefly just touch on published science, published studies as a whole, but particularly I'm going to look at the field of medicine, which is actually far simpler than nutrition science. That's the thing, far simpler, and it's still a mess, okay? So we're going to jump into some of the results that I've highlighted in previous absurdity of these scientific claims and stuff. So if you want to, just a couple that I wrote down here for you is you can go deeper on this. Depression, a second opinion, bad science, where I focus on this exclusively, doctor recommended, that just harps on how little doctors know about human health and nutrition. And then you can check out my interviews with world-renowned experts like Dr. Anthony J, Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Paul Saladino, Rob Wolf, all these guys. We dig into this a lot, so go check those out too, okay? Now, in those episodes, you'll find that I really like to cite findings from the Cochrane collaboration. And the Cochrane collaboration is a London-based network of more than 31,000 researchers from more than 130 countries, which conducts the world's most thorough independent analysis of healthcare research. This is all of healthcare, okay? And their findings will shock you. I'll just highlight a few of them for the sake of time here. They found that prescription drugs are the third leading cause of death in America after heart disease and cancer. And they also showed that their review of conventional medicine practices showed that only 38% of all treatments were shown to be beneficial or even likely beneficial. They also said, this is a huge number, 62% of all practices were shown, these are medical practices, 62% of all conventional medicine practices were shown to have negative consequences or, quote, no evidence of effect. Now, no evidence of effect in layman's terms literally means they don't work. They are useless, okay? And can be less than useless because they can actually be harmful. So let's soak that in for a minute. 62% of conventional medicine practices either do nothing or can hurt you. I really, really want you to think about this 62% number. Think about this the next time you spend your hard-earned money at a walk-in clinic because you've had the fucking sniffles for 24 hours. I really want you to think about that, okay? Keep this number in your head. Now, I'm going to continue. Another expert, this guy's name is Dr. Richard Horton. Richard Horton is the editor-in-chief of Lancet. Lancet is a peer-reviewed medical journal and is among the oldest, most prestigious, and best-known general medical journals in the world throughout all of history. And this guy's job is basically making sure that what is published in this medical journal is accurate. And Horton himself stated that all of the published research is unreliable at best, if not completely false. So let me just repeat that for you. All of the published research is unreliable at best, if not completely false. And he goes on to say, quote, the case against science is straightforward. Much of the scientific literature, perhaps half, may simply be untrue. afflicted by studies with small sample sizes, tiny effects, invalid exploratory analysis, and flagrant conflicts of interest, together with an obsession for pursuing fashionable trends of dubious importance, science has taken a turn toward darkness. Let's keep going. The Mayo Clinic Proceedings. The Mayo Clinic Proceedings are a monthly peer-reviewed medical journal that has been around since 1926. And a study published in the Mayo Clinic Proceedings in 2013 confirmed that 40% of all current medical practices should be thrown out, outright, gone, should not be allowed to be practiced on humans. 40% of all current medical practices should be thrown out. Sounds a lot like the findings from the Cochrane collaboration that 62% of all these medical practices have no evidence behind them and are likely not beneficial. So, if we have all these staggering results, 40% of all practices should be thrown out, 62% is shown to have no benefit or maybe a negative benefit. How can we have all these staggering statistics on healthcare research from some of the most well-respected, unbiased organizations in the world telling us that the scientific research of medicine is basically a massive failure? And yet, we still take nutrition advice from that same medical mainstream. That same medical mainstream. We still take nutrition advice from that same medical mainstream, even with all this horrific data for the rest of healthcare research. Now, this is especially crazy when we consider that nutrition studies are astronomically worse than pharmaceutical studies. This is group madness. Nutrition is even harder to study. Nutrition is probably astronomically harder to study than conventional medicine. And we're still doing this. The group madness. This is the blind leading the blind. And the problem is the people who seem to be the most oblivious to this common sense, right? Maybe I can see this because I use psychedelics. I don't know why these people can't see it, but the people who seem to be the most oblivious are the ones with the fanciest credentials because they are the most indoctrinated. That's what we need to understand here. Sure, these people have fancy, impressive credentials, but that does not mean that what they were taught is accurate. Doesn't mean it was ever accurate. It doesn't mean it's still accurate. Sorry, evidence-based zealots. You may have crammed a whole lot of incorrect information into your fat heads. Swallow your pride and admit the possibility of this. I love when my mind is changed by data. I love it, okay? Now, throughout all of human history, what I want these zealots to remember is that throughout all of human history, the scientists of the day ruled with an iron fist and were certain that they knew more than any other humans ever before in history. They were the smartest humans to ever walk the earth. Even when those scientists knew that the earth was flat, they believed this. Even when philosophers were literally being put to the death for even suggesting that the earth revolved around the sun. Even when the most cutting-edge medical interventions were bloodletting and leeches, those scientists were just as convinced that they were 100% correct as the scientists in the year 2020, okay? This is why when guys like Paul Saladino come out, who are super fucking brave, by the way, to come out and say, hey, maybe this entire system is wrong. Maybe plants are not good for you. Now, I'm not a full-blown carnivore. You guys know this, but I'm giving you an example. Paul is someone who's willing to stand up and say, we might have this whole thing wrong. By the way, I have the same medical credentials that you do, and I still think we might have this whole thing wrong. That's bravery. That's original ideas, everybody. The world needs more original ideas. We need to stop following blindly. That's how we got here, to 85% of the population being fat, sick, and nearly dead. We got here by following blindly, okay? Let me look at some of these comments, see if there's anything I need to dig into real quick, and then we're going to jump into why people are afraid of food. Oh, good. Seeing I just ate a pound of grass-fed beef and 4 pasture-raised eggs. I had something very, very similar just a couple hours ago. But I finished eating today about 5 o'clock. What else we got? Destroyed a pound of salmon, about 12 ounces of broccoli. Killing it, Joanne. That's awesome. Janelle, yes, warning, language. Look past the language. That's not the fucking point. Look into the content, okay? Finally, someone willing to tell the truth. Here we go. Yeah, Tabitha, the information that I got in my nutrition classes. Remember, guys, I had 3 different certifications in this, right? And they were all nonsense. All of them, okay? I'm a certified nutritional therapist, certified specialist in sports nutrition, certified specialist in fitness nutrition. All bullshit. Sorry. Just crazy, all right? So let's dig in. Why are people afraid of food?